Hey guys, Morelli here. Welcome to another round of a laddering video. Today I'm still using Kyogre. This is nearing the end of the ranked season, so I do want to stick with a strong Pokemon like Kyogre or Eternatus. I do want to hit 2000 rating points before I hit the end of the season, so let's see if I can do that. We are facing an opponent that has a few unorthodox Pokemon choices. P2, Arcanine, Gastrodon, and Pex. That is a very formidable Stolfor, and it is very unlikely for me to break it unless I use my Landorus T very well. I have Lumberry and Swords Dance on it, so that means that if I can bring in the Arcanine, I can set up on it, and once I set up on it, that's going to be good. I bring Ferrothorn to bait the Arcanine. Kyogre is hard countered by the Gastrodon, but that is going to let me to check Arcanine and Yveltal and force matchups. He does lead with the Gastrodon, perhaps fearing the Kyogre, but he has a free switch into Arcanine here, but I do want to make sure that he actually did bring Arcanine. I go for the safe leech seed here. There is no way he should stay in, risking the power whip. And he goes exactly into his Arcanine, which is good. Arcanine is a free Will-O-Wisp here, so I don't want to hard switch my Landorus and lose my Lumberry. That would make it a lot harder for me to set up. Instead, I go into the Kyogre. Flamethrower or Will-O-Wisp, either shouldn't be doing too much to me. He does go for the Will-O-Wisp, and unfortunately this does put Kyogre on a pretty long but still timer. His team is pretty reactive, and the only switch in that he has here is Gastrodon, so I'm going to take advantage of that by double switching out into Ferrothorn. And then, now that he has shown his Arcanine, and also shown that he is willing to hard switch his Arcanine into it, then I'm going to go into double back out. That is going to let me get the Lando versus Arcanine matchup. And as I said, that is critical for me to actually make progress on the team. So in face of Gastrodon, I do double out yet again. So I get the double switch right again, so this is perfectly going to plan. There should be very little reason for this Arcanine to stay in. I'm going to use Swords Dance, and that will cover the Yveltal switch in. However, he brought Porygon too, and that traces my Intimidate, so that is his answer to Landorus T for sure. However, my +1 Max Quake still does a ton of damage, and he either wants to just recover off HP, or he might want to Dynamax and Max Hailstorm. I think about it, this is a very critical turn here, but I choose not to Max Lando right away. And hopefully that means that I might be able to EQ the P2 once or twice later in the game and try to make progress on the P2 first before hastily Dynamaxing. Our opponent also taking his sweet time here. He also knows this is the critical moment of the game. This turn might just decide the whole game. And he does Dynamax here, and I call that correctly. This means that he will not be able to Dynamax his P2 the next time my Landorus sets up a Swords Dance. So the plan to win with the Landorus is going pretty well here. the Max Hailstorm does almost nothing. That tells me that this is a very uninvested Porygon 2, and I'm just going to go for a Leech Seed. I could go for a Kyogre switch in as well in order to try to preserve this Ferrothorn's HP, but I do go for the Leech Seed, and that will totally help me stall out this Porygon 2's Dynamax. But it seems that I don't even have to. He just switches out, gives up the 2 turns of Dynamax. I have no reason to risk this Ferrothorn, and for that reason I will go into my Kyogre. However, he reads that and makes a good play, goes into the Gastrodon. But this is a good play, don't get me wrong, but this smells a bit of desperation. And the reason why I say that is because Gastrodon gets a free switch into Kyogre every time. So he is afraid of if he were to just switch his checks to my Pokemon, like always going Gastrodon on my Kyogre, always going Arcanine on my Ferrothorn, and so forth, he's afraid that if he keeps making those predictable plays, then I'll get that Landorus versus Arcanine matchup yet again, and he'll be in really big trouble. He does get a Scald chance for his troubles, but fortunately I do not get the Scald burn, and I'm just able to do the same thing. Go Leech Seed on the Arcanine. And keep in mind now that he is a bit playing scared, a bit out of desperation, so I don't want to make some risky hard reads here. Kyogre is already burnt, and I thought this was a very obvious switch into Kyogre, and that he is going to try to predict that. And for that reason, I go into Landorus. However, he goes for the Will-O-Wisp, and this is a very big misplay by me. You don't just predict with your win condition just because you have some wishful thinking, thinking that this is gonna work out right. But there was no justification behind. Now, if he goes to Porygon 2 on this Earthquake, or Wisps on my Sword Stance, both are really bad. And I had no reason to be put in this position, but I do get this turn correctly, and that is going to take out the Arcanine. Now, his Porygon 2 and Gastrodon cannot possibly hope to beat the Ferrothorn without serious luck. I don't want Ferrothorn to take an extra attack, so I will just switch into Kyogre, just spam Ice Beam, but he forfeits. By the way guys, thanks for all the comments and subscribes. I have no idea why, but some of the comments are getting deleted. So don't worry, I'm not deleting your comments, but it'd be really nice if YouTube can just stop doing that, you know? This game, we are facing another Kyogre team. We have a lot of similar Pokemon here, with the Kyogre, Zapdos, Ferrothorn, and Mimikyu all being the same. He has one Zapdos check, and that is his Excadrill. However, it's really difficult for him to bring Excadrill against Kyogre, Landorus, Urshifu, and Ferrothorn. So, I'm going to lead with Urshifu, which has good matchup against everything, and Zapdos and Kyogre are in the back. And that, depending on the situation, I want to see exactly what he has, if he has Excadrill in the back or not. and Dynamax accordingly. Urshifu versus Mimikyu is not a good matchup for me, but Surging Strikes will go through the disguise with the second and third hits, and I should be able to do a sizable chunk of damage here. One thing that you want to, I think, know about lead Mimikyu is that often they're not just straight up attackers. They're using things like Substitute, Curse, Trick, things of that nature to try to position better with the rest of their team. So I will be able to get this Surging Strikes damage on Mimikyu, and he goes for Trick. Not a big deal. I am just going to go for the Aqua Jet. That seemed like a roll to KO. That barely misses out on the kill. Quite unfortunate, but I am thinking I don't want to quite sack this Urshifu yet. I will go into the Zapdos and see what he does. And I should be able to take out the Mimikyu with either the Volt Switch or the U-turn. He goes out into the Ferrothorn, so he was expecting the water move. And I will simply go for the Heat Wave here. It is possible that he could make the risky switch into Kyogre, but that is a very high risk play that I really don't think it's worth calling out on. And yeah, exactly, he has a very low HP Mimikyu that he is not able to do much with, so he sacks it. I get a Heat Wave miss here, but not a big deal. I am locked into Heat Wave, but he doesn't know that. He might be scared of the electric move, so there's no way he's going into Kyogre. And if I had if I could go for an electric move, I would definitely go for it there. He brings in his Kyogre versus Zapdos, so this is going to be a Zapdos Dynamax game for sure. He doesn't know that I'm Scarf, so my switch here is to Urshifu. I'm just going to sack it, and hopefully he goes for some other move other than, but he Water Spouts. That is definitely a good play by him. That makes him able to save an extra turn of Dynamax here. And he reveals Life Orb as well. So I have two options here. I could go into Kyogre and Dynamax my Kyogre, or I could go into Zapdos and Volt Switch. And I'm actually going to go into the Zapdos here, Volt Switch, and that means that I'll be able to Dynamax the Zapdos later. Even though Kyogre is my restricted legendary, Zapdos is way more valuable here. So I am going to go into the Zapdos, go for the Volt Switch, and once Kyogre's Dynamax runs out, I am able to just Dynamax my own Zapdos, just go for a bunch of attacks, and get the win there. This Zapdos ring does force out the Kyogre to Dynamax, so I'm just be able to just Volt Switch out into my Assault Vest Kyogre, which should take any attack from it. Geyser is the correct play here. Geyser does more damage than the Hailstorm into the Zapdos, also does a lot more damage into the Kyogre as well. I could try to Dynamax and survive this, but that is definitely a short-sighted play. As I said, I want to Dynamax my Zapdos in order to win. I do think about going for the max Flutterby to minimize the amount of damage I'm going to take, but thinking more, I don't see a reason not to just click the move that is strongest in front of me. My Zapdos is going to be able to make a ton of progress here and should basically, honestly, just win the game from here. The Ferrothorn does get a leech speed off, so maybe I should have just gone for the Airstream on the first turn of Dynamax, but not a big deal. This should take out the Ferrothorn even through the Protect, and Volt Switch should take out the Kyogre. Yeah, and Volt Switch gets the kill. Zapdos wins the game for me here. Third game, we are against an opponent that is pretty high on the ladder. He is, I think, pretty close to 2,000 points. That's where we want to be. We're not quite there yet. It's a pretty tough matchup. Celesteela is not a good matchup for us. He also has probably an offensive Eternatus. Also not a good matchup. I want to lead strong against both, and that means that I'm going to pick Kyogre, and I'll have Urshifu and Mimikyu in the back, and both of them trade pretty well. However, he predicts the Kyogre lead perfectly, and I am faced against the Seismitoad. This, whichever side he has, this is not a good matchup. He could be offensive, in which case he can just go for max overgrowth, be faster than me, or if he is bulky, that means that he has water absorb. I will just go for the Ice Beam here, trying to cover both cases, but he has Power Whip as well, and not special. And yeah, Seismitoad, a lot of offensive Seismitoads are physical right now, in order to make sure that they can always beat Kyogre 1v1. So my Assault Vest not helping here, and I am almost forced to go into Urshifu here. Mimikyu is at least slightly better against the Eternatus, which he definitely has in the back. So I want to preserve my Mimikyu. I want to Sword Stance up with my Mimikyu and try to win with that. he goes for the Dynamax onto the Seismitoad. I should be able to do a ton of damage with the Rain Boosted Surging Strikes. I'm not sure if this Dynamax is optimal, but it does suggest to me that he is very likely to have two Pokemon in the back that cannot Dynamax, or at least Dynamax respectively, you know. So he definitely has an Eternatus in the back, probably a Celesteela as well. That was a pretty good matchup for him, and it's probably a defensive Celesteela as opposed to some Dynamax play. I barely do miss out on the KO, which is unfortunate. I'm forced to go for the Shadow Sneak here, and he reads that well. He is able to preserve the sack with the Seismitoad, and that means that I have to play this almost perfectly. I go for the Sword Stance. I need this boost in order to actually break through the Celesteela. And this is a pivotal turn, so if I go for the Max Phantasm and if he doesn't protect, then I win the game. If he goes for the protect and I go for a second Sword Stance, I should also win by just going for the Max Phantasm 3 times. However, he does go for the protect a bit. Man, that is tough, because if I Sword Stance there, I definitely would have won the game. Highly unfortunate, yes. If you see, like, that Phantasm did approximately 30%-ish. So that means that I would have KO'd for sure if I were to just go for the Phantasm against the non-Dynamax. And he is going to stall out all my returns with Dynamax, and he gets the burn with the Flamethrower. So that really sucks, but I don't think it mattered too much. Celesteela was at really high health, and it was physically defensive, so I don't think, even if I KO'd it with the Mimikyu, yeah, that would have definitely KO'd without the burn, but I don't think that was enough to kill the Celesteela here, so that's going to be a GG. Fortunately, a loss for me. Hopefully we can bounce back from this. And this game we're against the Calyrex-Shadow Rider. And Landorus actually looks like such a great matchup here. With the Lumberry, I'm able to get a safe Sword Dance up on either the Umbreon or the Swampert. And I should be able to do a lot of damage from there. I do go for the Landorus lead, try to get as much mileage out of that as possible. Kyogre is brought because it's Kyogre. It does have a pretty decent matchup against everything other than the potential AV Bulu. I have no doubt that this is actually going to be AV Bulu because his team is otherwise so weak to Kyogre. And Mimikyu is going to be a good Pokemon here to check the Calyrex with the Shadow Sneak. I'm able to just Sword then stands up on this Bulu's face. Whatever he does, that shouldn't be a big problem for me. He goes for the Nature's Madness, probably did more than the Hornleech would. Also, that definitely suggests that this is an AD Lando. I have no reason not to go for the Airstream here. This is definitely either killing something or doing like 70% to Zapdos. And if he just lets the Zapdos die here, that is also fine by me as well. And he goes into the Calyrex. So this could not have worked out any better for me. So he has the Swampert and the AV Bulu against my whole 3. And I'm feeling pretty good here. I do go for the Max Quake, the Max Airstream in case he tries to do anything funny with the Bulu. Because he is just a defensive utility Swampert, he has no offense investment, and that is also based on flip turn, so that does not end up killing. This is a really good matchup for me. I am just going to the Kyogre here. This isn't such a useful Pokemon. Kyogre isn't such a useful Pokemon for me, and he doesn't have any other move other than the Water move. So I am able to simply go into Kyogre, save my Lando. Because if I have a low HP Lando against the Bulu, the base move Fly should still be able to do a ton of damage here. Yep, that is definitely Assault Vest for sure. I am able to just go into the Landorus here and sack it. And that means that I'm able to go into Mimikyu, and that should be a quite good opportunity to set up a Sword Stance and win the game on the spot. But I make a really bad misplay here. Instead of going for Play Rough, which has a 10% chance to miss, I go for the Phantom Force, and this allows me, this allows my opponent to switch into the Swampert. So if I play rough there, I was going to be able to 2-hit KO the Swampert, and he wouldn't have been able to do anything. But because I go for the Phantom Force, and he barely lives, that's probably a roll as well. But there was no reason for me to risk that. He goes for the yawn, and I'm in trouble. He gets flip turned into the Bulu, and he's going to get a lot of recovery with the Leech Seed and the Grassy Terrain. So he is going to also heal out of my +2 Mimikyu range as well. I have no other play than to Sword Stance, hope I live this, and hope that this +2 Phantom Force kills the Bulu. I barely live with the Life Orb recoil, but this game will come down to whether I can get the KO with the Mimikyu. And I go for the Phantom Force, and it misses out on the KO as well. So definitely not happy how I lost this game. Both this game and the previous were losses, but I feel very differently about both of them. Because I had a really good chance to win, and instead of going for the 90% chance, I was too scared and ended up risking an even bigger risk. For this game, I am going to just go for the Kyogre. He does have a Rillaboom, and seems to be his only real way to check my Kyogre. So I'm going to bring Kyogre plus Ferrothorn. Ferro should also be good against his Necrozma. And finally, I'm going to pick Mimikyu in the back, which should trade pretty well with just about everything he has. He gets the Kyogre lead call correctly and leads Rillaboom. However, I am also pretty okay with this because I have a switch into Pharaoh. Bulk up is not expected though, so I'm going to be almost forced to go for this Iron Defense here, try to survive this Rillaboom if possible. I am just going to go for the body press here. I don't think I can just stall this guy out by just going for the iron defenses, and that's why I just try to put as much damage on the Rillaboom as possible, and hopefully that should be enough for me to KO it with Mimikyu or the Kyogre, depending on how the situation goes. And I survived the second Max Knuckle as well. So that means that he has expended all 3 turns of Dynamax just trying to kill this Ferrothorn. That is wonderful news for me. I do go for the Ice Beam, even though I think Water Spout was actually a bit stronger. But that is fine. I can still go for the Water Spout here. And that Water Spout just takes out the Necrozma from very high health. So Kyogre just showing how stupidly strong he is. Without the Dynamax, I am just confident just Dynamaxing his Kyogre, and Mimikyu should be favored against basically everything he has in the back. With the exception of Hippo, of course, but if he is Hippo, this Dynamax Kyogre should just take this game here. I know that the Max Geyser is a bit stronger here, but I do go for the Hailstorm on purpose because I want to make sure that there is I get rid of any Focus Sash, and this Hail is going to be able to put slightly a bit more chip on whatever his final Pokemon is. And now, Mimikyu versus Urshifu. As long as I don't miss the play rough, I should be able to win the game here. And I don't miss, and that means that I'm able to take this game. So, thank you guys for watching. See you around. Bye.